We're back on Get Up with news from the NFL, where the league and the NFLPA met last night and will meet again tonight for another round of collective bargaining agreement talks. This is the 7th round of discussions regarding the league's next CBA. The current agreement expires after the 2020 season, and all of us, of course, who are fans are hoping they get these issues ironed out before we go into any potential chance for some sort of stoppage. So I want to bring our insider, Dan Graziano, into the conversation because, Dan, you've been following these negotiations closely. How would you describe the way they are progressing?
Not very well, Greeny. I think they've been talking a lot, but they don't seem to have made much progress on the major financial issues, which, of course, are the most important ones, the ones that will ultimately determine this. In the last CBA, the players' share of revenue was established, all revenue was established at no lower than 47% in any given year. They would like that number to come up. To this point, my understanding is that owners have not indicated a willingness to move off of that number, and that from the owner's side, they're interested in discussing the possible expansion of the season. Multiple ideas have been floated: 17-game season, 18-game season, expanded playoffs instead of expanding the regular season. That last one's one that I think the players might support, but no concrete proposals there yet. So they're kind of still dancing around each other and figuring out what the major priorities are, and they haven't really got to the nitty-gritty of negotiation. But there's a real disconnect on this expanded season. Players didn't want it in the first place, and now, 2-3 days after the retirement of Andrew Luck, one of the game's brightest stars at the age of 29, because he felt like a 16-game season was too much, I think that definitely, if there was any chance that the players were going to support an idea like this, it definitely dampens that significantly.
Interesting. So you're saying that the retirement of Andrew Luck, sneaky big news, actually might have an impact on the CBA negotiation. Great to see you, Dan. Thank you very much. I want to take this to the table here and turn to my two former players. You played, how many years you played?
12.
12 seasons in the NFL, times 16. It's a lot of games,
yep,
plus the playoffs. Would you, as a player, when you were playing, if there were more money in it, have been willing to go to an 18-game season?
Yes, I would have. I would have, because going into it, see, my mindset was I knew what I signed up for. Okay, I know all the issues that the players are seeing as far as player safety and ramifications later on in life. I knew going in playing in professional football that, okay, if I'm having 60 train wrecks in a game times that however many games, there's going to be residual effect. But what's the one way to offset that? Give me more money. Give me more money. And I think players along that line think similarly. If we're going to expand, then I need more money on the table.
And listen, I mean, you grew up in this sport, right? For those who don't know, Bob's dad was an NFL player for a long time, played for the Giants. I remember him well. So having grown up in it, what do you think of that? Do you think if there were really more money? Because at this point, everything is posturing. I've covered enough of these negotiations to know one side will say, well, we're not interested in that, and the other side will say the same, and it's all with some goal of meeting in the middle. Do you think the players would go for 17 or 18 games?
I think ultimately they will, but it's going to take a lot. Like Woody said, I mean, there's going to be money involved, but this isn't just going to be some little incremental bump. These guys they don't want it based upon how they feel. And there may be some horse trading that goes on with the relaxed drug testing policies, but it's going to really come down to, I think, the financial compensation package that's put together to where this isn't just a little bit more. They're going to want a substantial chunk of those next 2 games, or possibly maybe even in concert with that an expanded playoffs where they'll be getting some more of that as well.
I've said this many times. I'm totally against it, and in addition to any other reasons, I just don't think it's a good idea. I think the oldest adage of show business, which at the end of the day, that's what this is always leave them wanting more. The scarcity of the product is one of the many things that makes pro football so popular. There just aren't that many games. I do not think adding them will necessarily, in the long run, make the game more popular. Meanwhile, SportsCenter tonight, after the U.S. Open, they will have highlights and reaction. Rafa Nadal will be on the court for his first-round match, plus John Gruden on the state of the Raiders, and Justin Verlander and the Astros facing former teammate Charlie Morton in a potential playoff preview. At SportsCenter after tennis on ESPN and on the ESPN app. Back to college football. The defending national champion Clemson Tigers will kick off their season Thursday night against Georgia Tech. You can see it on ACC Network. And in his weekly press conference, Dabo Swinney spoke glowingly about his quarterback and Heisman frontrunner, Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor's had an awesome camp. I mean, unbelievable camp. I mean, if he'll just continue to do what he's done in practice and just take it to game day, he's going to be a great leader for us out on the field. He's really worked very hard in all areas that we challenged him in, and now it's go take it to game day.
Expectations are sky high, and there he is, the quarterback of our team. Kirk Herbstreit is back after a triumphant weekend in Orlando and a very busy week ahead, and part of that will be Clemson. And so give me a sense, what are your expectations for this quarterback? I can't recall a time that anyone had more expectations on him than this kid does right now.
Well, I think his approach to life, not only to football, will allow him to deal with the pressure. But I thought what Dabo said about areas that they've challenged him to get better, specifically where they want to see him get better. It's like any young quarterback. It's the first thing is protections, being able to recognize defensive fronts. Last year as a first-year guy, they helped him in that area. So I think if he can pick up how to affect the protections, it only help him. And as far as his throwing, it comes down to, like a lot of young quarterbacks, his footwork. He's an athletic guy. They run a lot of RPOs. He wants to be able to throw on balance, and I think a big part of that is just working on his footwork, and that's an area that he's really invested in the offseason. And I expect to see a better Trevor Lawrence with better wide receiver play and a better overall offense. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch them starting Thursday night against Georgia Tech.
Now, they are one of the huge powers in the sport right now and a prohibitive favorite in their conference. Let's go to Oklahoma, another one of the powers in the sport right now. Do you consider them a prohibitive favorite in the Big 12?
No, I don't. I think Texas has been improving with Tom Herman, and I think that Jalen Hurts is getting a lot of attention for the transfer from Alabama into Oklahoma. And let's face it, the job that Lincoln Riley has done with Baker Mayfield and then Kyler Murray, back-to-back Heisman's, reason to be optimistic. I get it. But I think people are underestimating Sam Ehlinger and the intangibles that he brings to the table, the attitude that he plays with, the way his team feeds off of his energy and his style. He played with a banged-up shoulder much of last year. Also, Tom Herman has been recruiting at a very high level the last few years. So I think there's more depth on this team now, more athletic ability top to bottom. And Texas was very close last year to Oklahoma. I just think this is their breakthrough year. I might be wrong, but I think it's Texas and OU out of the Big 12. But I've got to give the leadership and the experience to Sam Ehlinger over Oklahoma as we come into the season before we've seen any of these teams play.
Now, that would be something, obviously, for the really Texas to come all the way back. And so let me wrap it with this here for the moment. What four teams, if you had to pick them right now, what four teams do you think will be the last one standing at the end?
Well, I mentioned Clemson. We've mentioned Texas. I think both of those teams get into the four. I think Ohio State out of the Big Ten. And the reason I say that is I think Ohio State is beginning to have a big chip on their shoulder about all the talk about Michigan and what Michigan brings to the table. And the fact that Urban Meyer's not there and things of that nature, I think it really fires up this Ohio State team, and the fact that they've lost Dwayne Haskins. So I think Ohio State can get there. And then my last team is Alabama. I think Alabama can definitely play at a very high level. Another team that was embarrassed on a big stage. I was with their team a couple weeks ago. They're not in a good mood, Greeny. And when Nick Saban's teams aren't in a good mood, they typically do a lot of damage. So I would have those four. I'd have Clemson and Alabama. What would that be, the fifth time they'd meet? I'd have those two meeting in the championship, and I would have Alabama this time prevailing and Nick Saban lifting that trophy up to win it all.
All right, Kirk Herbstreit is on the table with those four. And as I look at them, once again, it is the way that the college game is evolving. It's about the quarterbacks, right? All four of them have the quarterback position set up. It hasn't always been that way in the sport, but it is more than ever a quarterback's game, even on the college level now, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it is. I mean, and one question, I guess, of those four would be Justin Fields. Justin Fields is, to me, coming in to run an offense that Dwayne Haskins threw, 50 touchdown passes? And everyone bragged about Ryan Day and his NFL style of offense. It won't be that way, at least initially, with Justin Fields. More of a run-first type of approach with his skill set.
All right, hugely busy week ahead. Herbie, always great to chat. Thanks so much. I'll see you next week.
See you, Greeny.
All right, meanwhile, tonight on ESPN2, WNBA action. Candace Parker and the LA Sparks visiting Elena Delle Donne and the first-place Mystics. That's tonight, 7 Eastern on ESPN2 and on the ESPN app. Coming up, Tom Brady got some very bad news yesterday. We'll tell you what that is and why it could have huge consequences this season. That and more on the way. It's Get Up.